was like, oh man, so good.
What an honor I have today. The one, the only, the best of TheBritisher.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm TheBritisher, and given that this is the first ever live chat I'm doing, my goal for tonight is to survive in one piece. Well, I guess with me, if you look sort of at the actual what people are calling a community here, whether it actually is a community or not, what I would say that compared to them, where most of them are sort of gamer-gators or atheists or whatever, at least the big ones, because that seemed to have been kind of the root cause of a lot of that drive. I came sort of more from an anti-censorship perspective, because I mean, over here I've been part of campaigns and whatever, writing letters to ministers and God knows what. But again, at some point, it was actually only a few months ago that I kind of actually realized that this stuff was happening on YouTube. I seemed to be completely oblivious to it. So for 2 or 3 months, I guess I just basically sat here and listened to other people. And sooner or later, I sort of felt, well, I guess I'll get in on the act and try and do something myself. So then I sort of did my first few sort of stumbling attempts. I didn't really expect too much of a response, but then within a very short time, I seemed to be getting, 30, 40, whatever subscribers. And I sort of thought, well, hang on a moment, that's sort of 2 classrooms full you're actually talking to. And then after that, it just kind of started snowballing and snowballing. And it's, I think I described it to someone in one of the comment sections as you're kind of almost like in some kind of runaway locomotive and you're just shoveling coal in like crazy in order to try to keep the thing going. But so that's really the background to it. So I think we'll go from there.
What was the movie you were referencing, Britisher?
That's like what the Magnificent Seven is to the Seven Samurai.
Yes.
I think she's done herself a lot of favors recently, has she? Did you ever hear about that poor sod who had himself, he had a Dumbledore, a massive tattoo done of Dumbledore all across his back.
Oh my god, no.
Wow.
And then after
Why would you do
he
that?
was so terribly proud of it. That was when J.K. Rowling came out and announced he was gay.
Yeah.
Well, no, what I don't understand in this kind of philosophy is, how do they actually intend to procreate the race if that is actually...
They don't.
Yeah, sort of the
Exactly.
labeling indicates in itself a dogma, doesn't it? In a way, they've become a male stereotype that a sort of a feminist could have invented, haven't they? I mean,
What
over
do
here we have these laws which were brought in. I mean, you see a lot on social media when they sort of talk about Europe, about saying, "Oh my God," sort of, to you Americans, I think a lot of this is completely incomprehensible because you just wonder how the hell have we ended up in this. But over here, sort of under Tony Blair and whatever, they introduced incitement to hatred. So.
Please explain that a little bit.
You'll all be familiar with the term, incitement to violence. That is illegal. So basically, even with American free speech, you can say whatever you want, but you can't incite violence. You can't just go, we should all go kill the black people.
A call to action, it's called here. A call to action.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there are laws there that have nothing to do with a call to action?
No. It's basically, incitement to violence has been illegal just about in every civilized country for centuries. But incitement to hatred is what they brought in. So now you've got incitement to racial hatred, incitement to hatred against homosexuals. I think they introduced at one point incitement to religious hatred. I think that had some trouble getting through Parliament, but I think they managed it in the end.
Holy shit, bastard. As soon as he's done, if he's not done, as soon as he's done, bastard, I've got to have your opinions on this, what he's talking about.
At one point, there was a guy, I think I mentioned him to you, Olga. There was a guy who was actually done for revving his car in a racially aggravated manner.
What?
Yeah, so this guy was actually arrested. He was then charged. He went through court. He was found guilty for revving his car in a racially aggravated manner. So
Run, nigga, run, nigga.
Don't be Justin Bieber.
Because a black guy crossed the street and he revved his car, and the black guy saw that as a provocation toward him, And when he then reported this to the police, he said, because this is the interesting bit, it is the allegation of the victim that matters. It is not the police that decides we believe this have been because of race. It is if the victim says, "Oh, this was due to race."
Oh my goodness!
It then gets logged as a potential, potentially sort of racially aggravated thing, and it's that sort of thing where you just sort of scratch your head and go, what on earth has happened that we are interpreting things into actions of
Oh my
people,
goodness!
which may in fact have nothing to do with their original intent.
Go.
Okay, so yeah, I was gonna say that's crazy. I didn't even know that, and that they can say that something is illegal for being a hate crime is so ambiguous. Or not even a hate crime, but an incitement. What is it?
Incitement to hatred.
Incitement to hatred. How vague and broad and subjective is that? That is insane.
So you can imagine how much fun they've got between, say, the Catholic Church and the gays.
Oh my
Because,
god.
of course,
Yeah,
you can see how much sort of, conflict there can be in something like that.
Yeah, because they're both going to be inciting against each other. Because a lot of things are incompatible in that way. And then, oh my gosh, just the amount of legality that's going to be involved all over the place.
And create in such a way, yes.
Yeah.
And I believe other countries, I believe Sweden and whatever, have all kind of crimes like that. There was one thing I picked up recently, Olga will know about this, the Le Pen thing I did, where, Le Pen, she is the one who is standing for the presidency in France. Now, her immunity has just been stripped by the European Court because there is a prosecutor who's bringing a case against her. Because 2 years ago, there was a journalist who he said that her party was just like the Islamic State. So she obviously flew off the handle, a bit like, did a Donald Trump and tweeted. So what she did is she tweeted 3 pictures of things that the Islamic State have done, including sort of, the beheading of one of the sort of an American journalist. And she said, look, this is what the Islamic State does. And of course, there are laws against that. There are laws against that sort of thing in France. And the laws are clearly intended as banning Islamic State propaganda. And clearly she was not in any way advertising the Islamic State. But because they could say, oh, well, she put these pictures up, they're trying to technically use that in order to be able to prosecute her.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with the spirit of the law. I would say we are sort of the antithesis to a collective. So we can't really be a collective ourselves.
That's what I would like to think that, but I think a lot of people do. There is a common thread that links us all, and it's not always atheism or skepticism. It's just anti-SJW, I believe. Like the majority of us, when I think of the word community, as far as what we are, I think a lot of us, back to basics, come from the anti-feminist movement.
But I think that's what the movement has sort of become, because if you would go back, say, 5 or 6 years, it would more have been a battle with the religious right or something like that. But basically the absolute opposite to the collective. We are those who pick holes in the collectives of others by, in a way, showing that they put up arbitrary rules in order to hold themselves together. So if we are effectively criticizing those rules, if we want to be a collective ourselves, we would have to have parameters within which people would need to fit. And we would need kind of gatekeepers who keep people within those parameters or bar people who do not exactly fit into those parameters from joining the community.
Well said.
In that regard, we can't really be that community, else people kind of have to start compromising their own ideals, if you know what I mean. I'd like to touch upon this kind of evangelizing of atheists, because I actually did a video about that some time ago, and there was a really interesting reaction to that. That basically I was sort of expressing how I was how I was amazed how people would actually evangelize their atheism. Because, I mean, I don't believe in God, but I don't really have any urge to try and convince anyone else that there isn't a God. I mean, what possibly could possess you to do that? Why would it be important to you that someone else also doesn't believe in God?
Because sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry, please, yeah.
I was gonna say, because those kind of people, they would do the same thing if they were a Christian. It's just the type of person they are. They have to be right, and they have to be right to the point that they have to make you agree with them.
Well, it's in that regard. There's a very, I think it was Dave Allen, the comedian, who once put it very succinctly. He sort of said, most people believe that a fanatic is someone who really, truly, very devoutly believes in his cause, and he believes in his God, and he just wants to live his way. But he said, well, actually, that is incorrect. The fanatic isn't concerned about how he lives. The fanatic is concerned about how you live.
Yes, exactly.
And but when it comes to when it comes to those atheists, what was so remarkable about the reaction in the comments section was that they all went to sort of, pre-rehearsed rhetoric that in that regard reminded me very much of sort of, you all know it when you've got social justice people, and they immediately go to their pre-rehearsed feminism, lines. And in that regard, it sounded very much the same to me. So even though this was supposedly very rational and skeptic, it seemed to be possessed of a similar sort of dogma, even though it was, in a different sphere. They sort of feel the need to subjugate in that regard. Okay, I would sort of like to sort of just hark back quickly to, when we were sort of talking about the atheists and whatever, because sort of one or two of you sort of touched on this, because it's that thing of, can one work with people who are of a different persuasion in that regard? And I would sort of say, well, of course you can, because it's what Based Mama sort of said, that basically if you are a Christian, then in the eyes of the atheists you can't really achieve anything. Because in that regard, well, you believe in some silly superstition. Okay, no. So as I say, what I was trying to get to there was, basically, if you're trying to say that, I mean, in that regard, I would class myself as an atheist. But if you hold as your position that anybody who is an atheist is just some kind of, somebody who believes in superstitious mumbo jumbo, and therefore can't really believe in anything, can't contribute anything sensible, then you kind of seem to forget the majority of human history. Because if you go back, say, the Magna Carta, how many atheists were present? The Constitution of the United States of America, how many atheists were there? So in that regard, you have to understand that in be it Christians, be it pagan religions prior to Christianity and whatever, all these people, the overwhelming majority of great people in human history will have been believers of some sort or another. Now, how could you possibly square that with these people can't contribute anything of any meaning because they have some kind of faith? Because that's in ignorance of the entire human history that ran before modernity and its atheism coming along. Anyway,
that is such an amazing point. I agree totally. Yeah.
So
that was great. I want you to debate him. I think that would be amazing.
Well, I would like to point out in that case that my speech is not an act, because everybody always keeps telling me that I put on some fake British accent.
I love your
Tell
voice.
Britisher.
I think it's hot. If you
Yeah,
talk
it's
all
amazing.
day, I'm so
I
fine
could
with
listen
that.
to you all day.
I say it's Alex Jones with a beard, people. Just do us one favor.
Amen.
Say they're turning the frogs gay.
Listen, folks, you want to know something right here? They're putting fluoride in the water. You think that's nothing to you? I'll tell you what, the frogs are fucking each other. They're making little gay frogs, and I'll tell you something, people, those are chemtrails up in the sky. You think that's just condensation is because you ain't read all the shit that I've read. My father was a dentist. I know what the hell I'm talking about. Was that good enough?
Yeah, that was
Yes!
Dude.
What's this? Talking about secret services, there was a wonderful headline just 1 or 2 days ago here in Britain that they now wish to diversify MI6 because
With what?
It's too white and it's too male. So
but Britisher, you said something specific on your channel. I hope that you say it today.
Yeah, basically what we need is more, disabled black lesbian women in MI6, clearly, because it's worked such wonders for the BBC. I mean, their standard has just plummeted since they've done this diversity nonsense.
Hey, they'll be the ultimate plant. Nobody will suspect them.
The KGB right now will be trying to hire lots of disabled black gay women in the hope that they're taken into MI6. Well, they've got these kind of diversity regulations which they brought in the BBC. That in the BBC by 3 years' time, they have to have all the staff and all on-screen talent must be 50% female.
Wow.
It must be 16% black or Asian.
You said, wow, hard bastard. I want you to comment as soon as he's done.
Okay.
It must be 8% disabled. They're setting these quotas, and their entire staff, I mean, the BBC is a very large organization.
I have a question.
Including... Sorry.
Are there that percentage of, quote, diverse people actually in the population, or would you have to go out and get them?
I don't believe that actually the percentages of the population are of that scale. So these people would be overrepresented. But they never mind being overrepresented. It's the underrepresentation they've got a problem with. I mean, I kid you not, today it was on the radio that the FA, that's the Football Association, or soccer as you colonials call it, the government has said that they will cut the funding for sort of grassroots programs that they give to the FA if they don't become more diverse at the boardroom level. And you just think, well, what the hell has this got to do with football? But it's just become a dogma that has just become completely sort of incessant in the entire political sphere. Everywhere there must be total representation. I mean, I kid you not, it was a year or two ago that someone I know was watching the Chelsea Flower Show. The kind of thing that the Queen goes to visit every year. And I happened to be in the room, and they had 2 BBC presenters on that particular time. And one of them sort of mentioned that, this time around, most of the exhibits were, of course, made by male garden designers. And both of them almost instantaneously fell into the line that, oh, yes, what we definitely need is we need more female garden designers. Britain needs more female garden designers. And you think, surely if there is anything the world is entirely indifferent to, is how many female garden designers there are at any given time in the UK. It's just this incessant insistence that we must have complete equity in everything. But this is just it, so there are not enough female rocket scientists, so therefore we must force this average up, even though, of course, this would immediately mean that, you're sort of taking them from a pool of, say, 2 female rocket scientists set to about 250 male. Right. You know full well that the quality is going to drop through the floor.
Right.
But that's one of the interesting things, isn't it, with feminism is supposed to, in a way, provide women with choice.
Yeah, right. But instead it's holding them to an impossible standard.
But they're insisting that those women do what they claim, these women choose what they claim is the right choice. Yeah. So essentially, they're not really providing them a choice. They're only just simply telling them what to do, but they're selling that as providing them with a choice. I guess sort of in order to get back to the this kind of whole community thing and the skeptic community thing, whether it is a community or not, I would sort of say it's not really a community as such. It's more something that can come into alignment. So as such, we're kind of a rather random people. But what you sort of saw in its most extreme sort of during the US election was that pretty much all the planets kind of came into alignment and their gravitational force seemed to pull in exactly the same direction. And I think that's the sort of way in which you have to kind of envisage this. I mean, I know people like Sargon have sort of, put out pleas whereby they're sort of trying to sort of forge some kind of community. Styx Hexenhammer 666, I think, also recently did something similar, where they're sort of trying to envisage how this could become a community. But I still think that even that we're all individuals effectively sitting in front of microphones at home, that's never really going to happen in that regard. But if there is some kind of, Clinton event Mark II, then no doubt it would happen again. But as such, it needs that event that inspires the alignment of these people. Otherwise, it will always be a sort of a random association of people who, yes, they perhaps criticize the same types of people, but they've all, in a way, got their own pet subjects. So anyway, yeah, I mean, that's how I would put it. Well, I don't know if I'm really, up for a poetry recital. If I can just cut in here, because one of the things you mentioned there with the dubbing, that really brought back a memory, particularly because afterwards you used the wonderful word, and that is that here in Britain they had a big thing. Over here we've got the British Board of Film Classification. They changed their name in the 80s from the British Board of Film Censorship because classification sounds so much more classy. But they really have a thing about trying to sort of, at times they've got their little pet hates. And in the sort of, I think it was the 70s or whatever, there were all these blaxploitation films, weren't there?
Yes.
Shaft and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dolomite.
You had a lot of sort of, black guys always sort of calling each other nigger and motherfucker and whatever. And the BBFC insisted that certain words be overdubbed. So they would find someone in Britain who had some sort of a similar voice to the person in question, and they would then overdub the naughty word that wasn't to be heard. And of course, one of the chief problems they encountered was motherfucker. Because how the hell do you overdub that? What can you possibly put that could be synchronized with the lip movement? And the only word they found was melon farmer. Particularly, we had sort of lots of tough black guys calling each other melon farmer in blaxploitation films, which is kind of hilarious. But of course, it's the unwitting type of humor, which is always the best type of humor.
I want to give the Americans.
If I could sort of cut in, because you sort of mentioned CNN and that coverage, and it kind of sparked something with me, because these last few days you've had sort of people like Lionel and Vernaculis sort of, refer to CNN and sort of say that there seems to be signs of broadcasters like CNN trying to reposition themselves. Mm-hmm. That suddenly some of their talking heads are no longer referring to Trump as worse than Hitler. And they're suddenly sort of trying to argue that, perhaps he's not that bad after all. And in fact, people like Vernaculis have been pointing out that, how on earth could one possibly believe someone who, 48 hours before was still decrying this guy as, worse than a war criminal. And now suddenly, perhaps he seems to be reasonable after all. So it seems, there seems to be the suspicion that these broadcasters are realizing that, look, I mean, we're destroying our own credibility here.
Yeah.
And if we want to still have any viewers in 6 months' time, we have to somehow reposition ourselves. Because in 6 months' time, want it or not, Trump is still going to be president. I do not understand myself to be an MI6 plant, if that's the question.
But what else would he tell you?
If I were, I would say that, wouldn't I?
Well, I should have quit you, baby. Should have quit you a long, long time ago. I should have quit you, mama. Oh, such a long, long time ago. I never would have found myself here in this predicament, down on this killing floor. So cruel. I should listen, mama. Should listen to my second attention.